Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, I'm a retired librarian turned homeschool mom, and we're going to be looking again at a little bit more of History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. Yeah, I've been using her a lot this year for some reason. She has a lot of really great videos, and they seem to fit with a lot of my themes. This is another weird one. I've covered a lot of her royal family videos. This is the history of menstruation. This is actually done very, very well and is extremely interesting video. I can't remember how long, and I think it's only about 16 minutes. So, but this covers the history of menstruation, or women being on their period, and how, depending on the culture, it was considered, and still is considered, very taboo. It's not a subject that you talk about in some cultures. It's women. It's a time for women to commune, and they pray, and they don't do anything. There's also times where they're outcasted, like in the Jewish faith. The strict, not so much now, though very much in these, though a little bit in the very, very strict Orthodox, where women can't touch anything, they can't really interact with their husbands, and they have to take a ritual bath. Islam is kind of the same. There's a lot of other very strict religious cultures where menstruation is considered evil, and it's, in the past it was, and probably in some cultures even today, the pains of menstruation is definitely considered. This is the curse of Eve. This is what happens when your other female, whether she existed or not, whatever, but bit into an apple, or technically built into a fruit. It couldn't have been an apple. Apples are not native to that area and would not have been written in the Bible. It's just, for some reason, it's depicted as an apple. There's probably a whole heck of a lot of history to that, due to conversions. But again, and essentially it's a punishment. And yeah, I have met people who think it's like the pain of childbirth and the pain of menstruation is a punishment, which unfortunately has made a massive taboo on the subject and causes problems to this day, particularly for women who have I'm going to mispronounce this, endometriosis. Basically, it's where uterine line grows places it's not supposed to, outside the uterus, and causes a heck of a lot of pain. And I think in her video, and this does not surprise me, it takes up to 10 years for women to get diagnosed with this, which sucks because I've heard it's extremely painful, and it has an effect on fertility for women who want to have kids, because again, you're getting tissue growing where tissue's not supposed to be growing, and swelling with blood where it's not supposed to be swelling with blood, and that's got to be a lot of pain. And there's a lot of issues where, because it's taboo, people don't talk about it, and women don't know what the right type of pain is and when to really fight for, no, this is not normal and I need help, kind of thing, and this needs to be treated because something is going on. But she also talks about a lot of tampons and what women did, how you had the sanitary belt, which literally did not disappear until the 70s, where you had the little belts with, you had the non-sticking pads, the reusable pads that you had to put on were extremely bulky and very, very uncomfortable. Apparently, tampons were not marketed to unmarried women until much later, because, oh dear God, your virginity is going to be ruined if you stick something up there, despite the fact that women were sticking things up there before. Again, she talks about a little bit of history of tampons in various forms. Exorbitant pads had been around for a very, very long time. How medieval women, who under all those service, sometimes would just free bleed because there was very, very little they could do, and then they had a whole bunch of layers on anyway. So I don't know how that worked. I guess they would bleed on their chemise, which is their undergown. But still, I don't know if you're dripping on the ground. I don't know if anybody would pay attention to. The ground was filthy back then, and nobody's paying attention. But it was very, very, very taboo. And then men got into we got away from the midwives, and we got the men involved, and of course the men don't care, and they're not actually looking, and they're not talking to the women about what the heck's going on, and they know nothing because they're men and they don't experience this, and issues. So, and again, menstruation is still, and it took a very long time. It wasn't until I think the 80s when it was ever said in an actual commercial. The period. You're on your period. You are bleeding. And yes, they still use the blue thing, I think, in tampon commercials. I don't get cable. I don't watch tampon commercials. But she does talks about a lot of the history, the invention of the menstrual cup, the invention of the tampon, though this took a long time to kick in. And again, some of these things, particularly the inserting things, were only marketed to married women because they were afraid of it ruining your virginity because reasons, and people are obsessed with the hymen. If you're not familiar with what this is, it's this strange piece of tissue that bleeds a lot of times when you have sex for the first time. No, having sex for the first time is not fun. But it can also break when if you're a gymnast and you're doing various things, or horseback riding, and doing it with various sports. So yeah, it's not a sign of virginity at all. It also may or may not weaken over time. So yeah, it's not a sign of virginity. But again, people are like, this has to be intact for you to be a virgin. The whole, we're gonna hang the sheets out because you bled. And yet again, it may or may not exist. The other interesting thing is women had less periods in the past than we do now. We're not quite sure why, though it may have to do with, particularly in developing countries, we're heavier in weight wise. We have better nutrition than they did. We have more weight on us, so we start menstruating a lot earlier. I think a lot of women, I started about 14. Some people, or young girls, are starting as early as 8 or 9. So it's somewhere between there. In the past, women didn't start menstruating until they were about 20. And then they stopped. They went into menopause much early, probably maybe about 40. And then a lot of times in between that, they were pregnant a lot. So women had a lot. I think she quotes like maybe 160 periods in their lifetime, while modern women today have about 400. So, and this, of course, it's very possible, and I believe she alludes to the fact that women in developing countries have less periods. Again, if you're impoverished, you don't have as much weight, you don't have as much nutrition, your body is not going to prepare to get pregnant because you don't have the nutritional capacity to carry another human. So you're going to have less periods, and I think that's what's affecting it. I am not 100% sure. I'm not sure science is 100% sure what causes people to start menstruating. But I had a great aunt who didn't start until she was 17. But she was also living through the Great Depression. So there's that. But again, I think my own grandmother started a little bit earlier. But the Depression, there was a 17-year age difference between those two. So yeah, my grandmother was a heck of a lot younger, and probably had more access to better nutrition because World War II came around, and then World War II came around. She was not a teenager during the Great Depression. She was a teenager during the World War II, during most of World War II. So there was definitely rationing. Things weren't quite as impoverished as they were during the Great Depression. So, but it is a very, very interesting video. It's good for my homeschooling audience. If you're looking at the history of women, if you're doing sex education, this is a good video to watch, because this is talking about the history of menstruation and periods and period products and how they were advertised and what was used throughout time. It's a great history video. It's very, very interesting. I only watched it last night, and I find it extremely engaging. Again, Lindsay Holiday is a great presenter, and she presents a lot of great information in a condensed time, because again, I think this is only about 16 minutes. So this is a good video. Again, age range depends. It seriously depends on what you're teaching your children. Again, my preschooler is not going to have any interest in this. Middle and elementary, but it depends on what you're teaching and where you're touching on this subject. It's a great history video. no matter what age. And it's good for, I'm not advertising just for girls. This is for any and everybody, and I highly recommend it to be seen by both sexes because boys need to understand this too. And this is not, we are working on this not being a taboo subject. It's like, I'm sorry, this happens to women every month. And no, it's not tied to the moon cycles. Yes, that's what the menses come from. Yeah, it comes from, I think, Roman for moon. Because, yeah, and no, it's not actually connected. And no, women do not sync their cycles. It's not science. They pretty much scientifically disproved that. You don't actually sync with the women you live with or your friends. It doesn't actually happen. It's in your head, not to mention our cycles vary and are insane, and every woman's very, very individual, and every cycle is very individual, and then birth control can do odd things. And yes, I have been on birth control. No, I'm not. No, I cannot be on oral birth control now. The estrogen causes high rates of blood clots, and that's not good for me. And my body does not like that. I've had a DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, which is blood clot in my leg. Nearly killed me when I was in my late 20s. So me and my husband took other precautions to keep our single child, which is pretty much all we want. Originally, when I started the channel, I was thinking we were going to have two, but honestly, pregnancy sucked. Childbirth sucked. And my child is, as much as I love her to death, she's a handful. And they're expensive. Children are extremely expensive. So we're sticking with one, and we're choosing other forms that are a little bit more permanent, to say the least. So, but again, I love this video. It's very, very interesting. It's great history. Lindsay Holiday does a fantastic job. Otherwise, I wouldn't have covered her quite so much. I think this is my last video on her for a while. She's not syncing up with anything else I'm doing the rest of the year. So, if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. I do cover a lot more books and actual films. The YouTube channel reviews happen because it's lining up with something I'm covering. And I can't always find films that balance stuff out, which is the reason my LGBTQ stuff, you're going to see me covering a lot of YouTube stuff and a lot of short films. Because, let's face it, there's not a lot of child or family appropriate LGBTQ plus media out there. Why there's tons of books. Getting it on screen is a whole different thing. So there's a lot of that kind of going on. I'm also covering unicorns and Jewish history and Caribbean history and a lot of other things. So, along with some book series, I've covered The Princess Diaries, Tamora Pierce, Guardians of Ga'Hoole, which should be, I think, going on right now, or coming. I'm covering a little bit more Meg Cabot and some more Catherine Lasky near the end of the year. And then we may be covering, this is not set in stone, this is 2024. This is the end of 2022 here. The Animorphs have been suggested to me as something to cover in 2024. So that is something to look forward to. Again, I'm playing with the Animorphs. It depends on whether I can get a hold of it in my library. So like and subscribe, leave a positive comment if you have one. Thank you.